instead of worrying about negative things happening, quote unquote negative things. It's more like, oh, well, that experience that I could have perceived as negative is probably going to teach me something cool. So if I'm just chill about it and stay with it, and I get that, as we are talking about earlier, if I feel it entirely and go through that experience, there's going to be some wisdom there.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the One Mind Meditation Podcast. My name is Morgan Dix, and this is a show about meditation, mindfulness, and health. And today I'm delighted to share with you my interview with Jonathan Mozenter. I've known Jonathan for many years. We are in a men's group together, focused mostly on spiritual practice. And today we have a fascinating discussion about Jonathan's introduction to meditation and really how it all started. When he started meditating, he had a bad case of ADD, attention deficit disorder. And meditation made a huge difference for him. It actually helped him go off the medicine he was on. And I don't know if cured is the right word, but it basically transformed him. And so we explore that today, his whole path in relationship to meditation and ADD, and how he learned how to cultivate his capacity for focus and attention and ultimately spiritual transformation through meditation. So I think you're going to love that. It was a beautiful interview. I loved doing it. Jonathan's a good friend of mine, so I knew we were going to have a good time, but I think you're going to really, really value what Jonathan has to say. He has a lot of beautiful things to say about compassion and self-acceptance too. So please listen to the whole thing. It's all beautiful. And all right, let's jump into this interview with Jonathan Mozenter. All right, Jonathan, welcome to the show. It's great to have you on here.
Thanks, Morgan. It's great to be on it. Thanks for inviting me.
My pleasure. So everybody, I've known Jonathan for many years. Originally, I was in a spiritual community, and I think I met Jonathan because we were in like sort of overlapping contexts, and he was dabbling and checking out different things. But then when my spiritual community collapsed, we ended up being part of a men's group together, which eventually Jonathan sort of became the leader of it. It's sort of a men's outing group, but it's really actually much more than that. And we do meet once a month, and the focus of our conversation is usually in one form or another spiritual practice, because that's really the thing that bonds this group together. Wouldn't you say, Jonathan?
Yeah, absolutely. One of your past guests, I believe Kenzo,
Yes.
started it, and Ted Saad took it up after that. Yeah, your recollection is perfect. And we met through, I think that for me it was the integral theory meetup.
Yes.
Then in your community, the Enlightened Next one, we're together, and I was honored to join that and carried it forward. You really kind of met me at a pivotal period of change, which I'm sure we'll explore in this call. It's been very fruitful to have that community. I'm very grateful for meeting you and the other people in our community.
Likewise. And Jonathan and I have become close friends just through that process of being in that group together. And then we've now gone on several retreats together. We do these plant medicine retreats, and we can talk about that a little bit more later in the show. But that that has really brought us much closer, because those are real sort of journeys and spiritual adventures, and we unpack a lot together afterwards. So, but Jonathan suggested that we do this podcast, and he had this really interesting idea that I thought you all would be interested in, which really had to do with, at least to start our conversation, the relationship between meditation and ADD, like one's ability to focus. Basically, Jonathan told me that was one of the main catalysts for getting him onto the path. So that's where we're going to start. I thought, Jonathan, how would you feel if we just kind of back up and you just start, because now you're a real committed and devoted meditation practitioner. How did that all start? Where did you begin? And can you just share your story a bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm 47 now. And as I was approaching the age of 40, I kind of like, like a lot of most people got kind of reflective. And basically my assessment was, my first 40 years were fun. I had a good time. But there was something missing. I doesn't feel like I was hitting that top gear.
Mm.
And I noticed, I was very aware. Had always been into personal development. My careers in organizational development and change, and I have some background in psychology. So I've always been interested in that stuff and working it. But I noticed there were some persistent problems that were getting in my way.
Yeah.
And I just was just like, listen, if I don't like make those things my highest priority, I'm never going to get past these.
Mm.
And it was a real shift. I just said, boom, it is an internal shift. And I was like, I'm going to get past these no matter what. Really, it was like
Wow.
a willful thing. I was like, whatever it takes. There was a real internal shift. And honestly, because a lot of changes I've been going through are difficult. And I don't know if I would have been able to get as far as I've gotten if I didn't have that very inside, like deep commitment to it.
Yeah.
And so one of the problems, as you mentioned, was just distracted. I was like not present all the time, and I was like
Jonathan,
taking on too many things. Go ahead, Morgan.
one
Sure,
question
fire
before
away.
you. Cool. All right. So before you take us into this, was there something like, because that sounded like when you just described that shift, sounded really powerful. Was there an event, or was that just part of your reflective process, or did something happen that made you feel like I gotta make this change?
Yeah, it wasn't really an event. I was
Yeah.
just like, I don't know, like just like a deep
Confluence of things.
feeling. It was like a feeling like, I'm here to do something important, and what I'm doing is, listen, my life was pretty good. I had a lot of friends, I had a great job, I think things were good, but just like a deep feeling of something missing. It's just that,
Yeah.
coming to midlife thing, like, like looking at things. So yeah, it wasn't really an event. It was more just, I guess the event was turning 40 maybe.
Yeah.
Or as
Okay.
I was really, the shift happened a bit before that, but like as I was approaching that, that's where the deep reflection was. So if you want to point it out, I guess it's the age and the
Cool.
reflection.
All right. Thanks. Thanks for.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay. All right. Sorry, I interrupted you. You were talking about, you were starting to kind of. Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, basically, like persistent problems, I think I was saying was just things associated with ADD, like not being like fully present, taking on way too much, like very classic ADD problems. And so the shifts kind of happen like this. It kind of like one shift was, I'm very passionate about music, and I decided to listen to less music and more into audiobooks. And that kind of actually shifted me. I started listening to more like personal growth stuff, and that's what got me into integral theory. And integral theory kind of was one of the first things that this is the Ken Wilber stuff,
Yes.
introduced me to like meditation was one thing they started talking about. I never really, I had heard of meditation, but honestly, I didn't know anything about it, like really nothing. And that was one of my first introductions. And
Mm.
that led me into the integral theory meetup group where I met, became friends with other people in our community, including your former guest who led it, Ted Sod. And he was the one who was doing this meditation with Dan Brown, and I was, we became good friends, and he was he suggested it might be good. I told him about my issues and what I was struggling with, and he said, yeah, I think this might be a good program with you. So even before I did that, I realized that I made some other changes. I completely changed my diet. I
Mm.
went from kind of more of a traditional American sad diet to like more of like a paleo, not a strict paleo, but like that helped a lot. It got changed my energy.
Yes.
So I really became food was like the first big shift. The second big shift was an even deeper to daily exercise. I really just said I'm gonna like exercise every day. Um, and so
Nice.
that was a huge shift. And both of those helped my ADD for sure. That was like a start. And at the time I started, I was taking some medication that I later got off of. But
What
then I
what
did the
kind of
meditation. What was that? It
may I ask what the medication was?
was on Focalin. It's
Focalin.
like yeah, it was basically like the most potent part of Ritalin, I guess is
Wow.
yeah.
Okay. Got it.
And I don't know. I tried several ones, and that was the one that worked best for me.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so that took me to the meditation with Dan Brown's pointing out the way. And the first retreat was led by Dan and his now protege, John Churchill, who is also my meditation coach. Within the Dan Brown system, you take these retreats, but you also work with a coach one-on-one. And that retreat was like a complete and total game changer, like anything beyond I had expected. I was
Mm,
just like looking to
mm.
get some tips on getting my mind sort of like more concentrated. And it's like an 8-day retreat. They have, like a little half or a little more half is focused on concentration in a real deep way. But then they have a lot of these insight practices. And Dan and John are both deeply into psychology. And Dan's got written like, I don't know, many, many books, including stuff with like Ken Wilber on psychology. And he's a very, very brilliant man.
He's a
And
professor at Harvard too, right?
like an adjunct professor. He does teach
Adjunct.
classes at Harvard. That's correct. Like
Yeah.
he does like performance and like legal performance and medical, and I think he throws in some of his meditation stuff. Yeah, he's got many hats. He's a like, professional psychologist. He's a world-renowned meditation teacher. He's like I think considered an expert on attachment, and he like also knows hypnosis, and he goes to like The Hague, and he does like defense. He's multi-talented man, and he
Defense
base
meaning like
like he
he's
would
like a
go, yeah,
forensic
like
psychologist or something.
yeah, something like that, exactly. Like basically some like people who like abuse cases are on like on a national level. Or, I mean, I think he does it not it's not just national. I think he'll do stuff in the States too. But yeah, like they'll call him in like to like help victims, I guess. Like yeah, as you're saying.
Expert witness type thing.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And so basically it was really an exploration into mind, and it was really into how consciousness works. And I had this whole background. My parents are actually social workers, so I kind of grew up in an environment where psychology was discussed often, and I kind of almost think about psychology as my like original mental model. So this kind of blew it open. It was like psychology like plus 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 plus. It was like
Yeah.
the Tibetans have figured it out way more than like what I learned in Western. And it was very rational, and it has you like, I guess the difference is like instead of just focusing on like the content of our mind, it actually focuses on the mind, like how it actually works, and like ask questions like, what is this thing? Like really deep questions. And like I guess I call them like the insight practices or Vipassana. And it that was like blew my mind. So
Mm.
and they kind of
Mm-hmm.
explained how these practices work to get the mind quiet and eventually completely quiet after a lot of work. Obviously, that's not very difficult to do, but they showed the path, the whole path, and when they do this whole thing, the whole path. In the first class, I pack it in. It's a very dense class. I've taken it like 3 times, and every time I take it, I get something else out of it. But also, like in the beginning, because my concentration was so poor, I understood the whole thing conceptually, but it was very difficult to do it because in order to do the high level insight practices, you have to hold them concentrated. So it would be years before I would really sort of get deeper into that. But that
Mm.
was like that's what you want to know, what started me on my meditation. It was that whole sequence of events. And then from that day on, after that class, I probably meditated, pretty close to 99% of the time, like once a day or something.
Wow.
It's considered, yeah, it's for me, it's like, it's a commitment. It's just like, as I kind of said, like earlier, I was like deeply committed to be transmuting to my higher self. And I knew this was key.
Yeah.
And so I've just stuck with it, even though
So
it's been hard at times, very hard at times.
yeah, I believe that. All right. So everyone, a couple pieces of context here. So Dan Brown teaches in a context of Tibetan Buddhism, and it's Dzogchen. And if you'll remember, one of our previous guests who Jonathan has mentioned now a couple times was John Churchill, and he about 5 or 6 episodes ago. And if you want to learn more about the path itself that Jonathan's talking about, I did a whole interview with John Churchill where he kind of in broad strokes lays out the path itself. Nothing obviously even approaching the detail of, going on a retreat but he just kind of gives a picture of what that path is. So if you want to learn more about that path itself. I encourage you to check out the interview with John because he's very clear and articulate in describing the whole thing. But okay, so yeah, I just wanted to say that for everyone
Sure.
listening, Jonathan. But
That was a fantastic interview, and John's a fantastic teacher. But even a little bit more context, it is
yeah,
Dzogchen. It's also one thing they call Ma Mudra, and they both fall in this third turning of the wheel. There's like three turnings in Tibetan Buddhism, and the third, or in Buddhism, and the third turning is called the Vajrayana school, or the Tantric school, or the essence nature. They're all kind of synonyms, and anyways, that's the kind of context of
yes.
where the teachings kind of come from.
Cool. So, all right. So you've gotten this exposure and like you took that class 3 times and it became a deep commitment. Can you talk a little bit about like then the impact on you and in the beginning, like maybe just how did that affect your ADD? Like, did that start to change with meditation? Hey there. So, are you interested in starting a meditation practice? Do you already have a meditation practice, but you feel like it's flagging? Let me introduce you to the Meditation for Life mini course, your guide to discovering the positivity, balance, and the ocean of calm that's already inside you. As you know, on this podcast, we interview people who have, in many respects, discovered that ocean of calm for themselves. And through our Meditation for Life mini course, we're really trying to provide you with the tools that are going to give you the ability to tap into that same positivity and balance and calm inside of yourself. Really, it's a way to discover a sustainable source of daily happiness. It's self-paced, and it's going to take you on a journey and give you some really essential tools. So we're talking a simple course here. It's like 5 in-depth lessons, 5 guided meditations, a couple beautiful infographics, a meditation challenge. But basically, if you can imagine what it would feel like to walk into work, for example, feeling light and free and ready for anything, if you can imagine being ready to manage family disputes with calm presence, or to stop beating yourself up and start caring more for the most important person in your life, you. So let's be clear up front. It doesn't take a lot of time, but if you invest a little every day, meditation can change your life. It's like learning any new skill. It gets a little easier each time. When you meditate every morning for 10 to 15 minutes, you'll notice things starting to change because every day you're doing the inner work, the hardest work first. You'll start your day generating focus, clearing your mind, and establishing a confident and grounded center. So remember, I love this quote. The great filmmaker David Lynch says, "The thing about meditation is you become more and more you." So what are you waiting for? Join us. Check out the Meditation for Life mini course over at aboutmeditation.com. Cool. So, all right, so you've gotten this exposure and like you took that class 3 times and it became a deep commitment. Can you talk a little bit about like then the impact on you and in the beginning, like maybe just how did that affect your ADD? Like, did that start to change with meditation?
Yeah, why don't I talk a little bit about how it unfolded?
Yeah.
I'd say like for me, concentration still is, and certainly is probably the most difficult part of the path for me because it's into a weakness.
And when
But
you say concentration, can you just
sure.
define that for people?
Yeah, so the concentration just means like staying like on an object, like for like following your breath and then your body, like a basic concentration exercise, or just looking
Yeah.
at an object. It's, I guess, calm staying practice would be another way to frame it.
Yes.
And so
Shamatha.
shamatha, yeah, thank you. Yeah, exactly. And so it's that part probably is because of my background. the karma, I guess, karma I've come to learn just means like momentum or habit. And so the causes of my ADD, which maybe we can get into in a bit, which I kind of discovered through this process. But before I even get into that, I want to just talk about like it was difficult in the beginning. I'm not gonna lie, like I really didn't like it when I first started out.
Yeah.
I was just like I had a hard time staying. Like I just was like if I put the timer on next to me and I remember these days and I'd be sitting there meditating, I'd look over and I'd be like, what? Only a minute's passed? It's like, it's just like it was difficult. And so they slowly walk you into it and they say, don't do more, start slow if you have to. And, it's very heady. Like I know in our meditation practice, we're talking about following the breath and then like listen to your body in between breaths. And like I couldn't even feel my body at the time. I was so heady and like they just had me like focus on the body for a while so I could
Mm,
get sensations. So just kind of painting a picture of where I was. And so it was a real will. I mentioned will in the beginning. Really, I needed the will a lot. And I'd say it took me a good couple of years to really get the concentration up to a place where I could start holding these kind of insight practices for more depth where they could have more impact.
yeah.
But along the way, I would say that I was getting benefits all along the way. I mean, I think what happens is you just get more separation between you and your thoughts. So you're not really your thought. One of the things that kind of taught me was, if I can view my thoughts, then I am not my thoughts. I'm, more the witness or the deeper self. And, the thoughts are kind of just happening. So it gave me some space on that. I just slowly, it's very like, it's not a kind of practice where it's like you do it and then boom, the next day you're a million times better. It's a very like slow, but it's like you look back, I look back now, it's like night and day, but you look over like a year or two but on a day-to-day thing, it's just like these very small baby steps and you need to be like really kind of persistent.
Yeah.
And then I guess like another,
I think a lot of people are going to be able to relate to that who are listening
yeah.
to this. By the way, so I mean, it's cool. It's cool you're unpacking it like this because I think that's, to be honest, what you're describing, I think is what puts a lot of people off meditation to begin with because
Hmm.
it's it's just so, you know, we all in our culture, as you know, it's like you bounce from one thing to the next, and it is challenging to just to stay in exactly the way you're describing. So I just, especially when you don't see immediate rewards, and you have to just do your practice and commit like that. I think it's a great description of the challenge that you can encounter. I liked it.
Thanks, man. Thanks. Yeah. I mean, I would just encourage everyone. It really is worth it. I mean, I think one thing I did learn as a kid, kind of, just having being informed with psychology, is that I realized that literally every second, everything is filtered through my consciousness. So
Yeah,
of course, it's worth improving the tool that you're literally spending 100% of your time in.
yeah,
So I saw it as like a quote unquote like high leverage opportunity. If I fix this, a lot of other things are going to get a lot better.
yeah,
And I would say that's absolutely true.
yeah,
But yeah, you got to stick with it though. And the thing that like came another layer to this, like the first one was just getting a little bit of space for like this reactivity. This reactivity turns out to be the key or one of the biggest keys. Because really what I learned was how consciousness actually works. And what I've learned is that like when you stay with whatever actually is happening, no matter how intense it is or whether it's good or bad, and you just stay with it from beginning to end, like that's actually like the most optimal and most healing. And like what the problem is that we get to some uncomfortable feelings and like that's one end of it and we like push away. And the problem is when you don't totally absorb an experience, you suppress it and into your unconscious and it keeps popping up in some other ways. And that was part of like what ended up causing my ADD, I think, is we have a lot of people's distractions that they go suppress stuff. And then the other extreme is that you have some really positive experiences and you keep trying to recreate them or keep
right.
grasping for them. And both of those things take you out of the moment. I think there's actually like studies that show like the common thing for like peak experiences, like whether, having a great conversation or at a concert, is that you're just like super, super present, like underlying all this, like whatever, because the moment is so great. You're just like so present. And what this meditation is showing is that you can actually have that kind of presence, more of the time, and then ultimately all the time if you went
Yeah.
way down the path. But it's really instructive about how mind actually works. And so the next layer for me is actually, like, they call this like a like sometimes someone's broken them down into stages. So like you have like the first level is just like they call it like gross level, where it's just like more like concrete behaviors, and then the next level is kind of like subtle. And like one of the benefits of the subtle layer is I started to get real intimate with what are these distracting thoughts, like what is the content of them. And that was a game changer, like being
Mm,
able to actually witness them and see the contents of them, and then do explorations about, like, well, where did that come from, and why do I have this where did this patterning come from?
right.
And I guess this is like, what people would call like shadow, or some people in our meditation community call them like clouds, and they're the negative karma. And for me, like, I was able to trace a lot of it back. For most people, I think it's going to trace them back to like habits that went way back to early childhood. And for me, like, I had a period when I was younger where I was teased for emoting a lot, crying, and then was because of that, I like decided not. I didn't really want to cry anymore in public, because like that was going to get me ridiculed, and it made me sort of dislike that part of myself, and also suppressed that emotion. And I overcompensated it by kind of trying to outthink things. I think it's like a defensive
Yeah, right.
mechanism. And then I ended up seeing that a lot of my thoughts were to manage this sensitivity. It was like ways to think about something so that I didn't have to feel it. And that was like a lot of my content that was taking me out of the moment.
Yeah.
And then I went on this journey to like, how do you actually get rid of that?
Mm,
And that's not easy. Let me tell you, that's another, as difficult as the concentration was, this is an equally difficult process. But as I said, I was completely committed. It's like, I'm doing this. And so I guess that I've used lots of different techniques. So one technique, that, like in terms of the meditation, in terms of doing that, which is actually looking at like what is a thought? Where does it
yeah.
come from? Where does it go? And I guess what you kind of doing these practices, you come up with these insights that, it's like it's a construction. It's basically it's not, it doesn't self exist. They probably heard the term like emptiness, and basically what it's saying is like emptiness of intrinsic. It doesn't have by itself. It's not anything. It's basically, when I looked at the thoughts, it's basically my reactivity from the past, a pattern placed overlaid on whatever was happening, quote unquote, out there, or whatever's happening to whatever
Yeah.
my interpretations of the experience was. And so you start to see that. And so one huge tool is like just being able to catch it and be like, oh, I know what that is, and I'm not going to listen to that. So that would
Yes,
be like a
yes.
very beginning. That's actually a huge. I mean, that's a big leap.
That's huge. That is huge. And just to kind of to frame all this in time,
Hmm.
you're kind of unpacking the inner journey here, but this stuff didn't happen like over the course of a couple of days. We're talking over
Oh,
the course of like a couple of years, right? Like
yeah, many.
developing traction in your ability to concentrate and the sort of developing skills in the shamatha practice of just calm, abiding, and staying and holding an object to then the next layer, which you've been describing now, if I'm representing it accurately, this next level of starting to kind of look under the hood, as it were, and just say, all right, well, where is this reactivity coming from? And looking at the actual thoughts themselves, and moving on to what you just said, like developing an actual kind of different narrative in relationship to a pattern and shifting the pattern.
Yeah, exactly. Great question. So yes, I would say it was an unfolding, and there were probably a good couple years where most of my focus were on concentration. Now, I want to
Yes.
say that some people get concentration much faster than I do. I was slow, so you could take longer, or I was probably slow on that end. But yeah, it took a couple years to get it. I want to say a couple more things about this also.
Yeah. And
One,
also slow relative to who and what, it's just like
yeah,
it's so this is I also want to emphasize this just feels like it's so particular to every person that
yes,
it's like okay, quote unquote slow, but compared to other people that might have been like rapid, it's just like
right.
it's whatever really it's whatever pace you need to go at is the right pace because that's just what you need.
I agree with that. Yeah, everyone's context is completely unique. The
Yes.
journeys, there's some meta patterns that are useful to hear, but the
Right.
actual journey specific is completely unique. I agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I say it probably took a couple years before I was like seeing the thoughts a little bit more. It's definitely not a black and white thing. It's more like a slow onset, and then there are degrees. It's not like all of a sudden I was catching it all the time. It doesn't happen like that at all. It's more like you slowly upping tick the percentage.
Yeah.
So there are two things I want to one about like the content. I will say that as I kind of mentioned earlier, I was into personal development and psychology. I'd done a lot of work, this kind of work in terms of the content of my issues beforehand, and that was definitely helpful to have that background. So I had some idea about what my shadow was just through other kinds of whether it was therapy or other programs I'd done. The other thing is there's this thing I really want to emphasize. This is super important, but there's like what I would call this quality within meditation that's called I call moment to moment metacognition, which I think is one of the most important. Like if we were going to break it down, like each quality into quote unquote like an area of development or line of development, that this is one of the most important ones. And what I mean by that specifically is like what am I actually conscious of? It's like I'm doing something, but am I fully there with it with all my energy? Like and being like completely present with that. Like that's a key thing even to this day. I feel like that's like the key thing is to like get that online 100% of the time. So it's like there's like what you're doing and then your awareness of what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And eventually I guess you could collapse them. They do the same thing all the time, but that's a long process. That's a huge thing for me. I think all meditators is this process of monitoring what you're doing so that when you're not staying or you're not doing whatever insight practice you're applying, that you're aware of it and you can make that adjustment. I mean,
Right.
that's like it's super enormous. And to like actually like I remember that was a big shift when I was doing the meditation is to like make that a focus. Like I'm gonna be aware of what I'm doing so I can when I start, my mind wanders and goes off to wherever, I'm like actually aware of it. It's not like several seconds or minutes later. It's like I can catch it and go, and then go back to the breath. So I mean I also think there's like a huge compassion piece. I mean, it's this whole piece around compassion and self-compassion is just enormous in this process because it's so
What
difficult. And I
I
was just gonna say, what
okay,
was
yeah, go
this?
ahead.
Um, I was just say
Yes.
that it's like it's this piece of like because it's so easy to be like, oh, I'm not on my breath, bad Jonathan, or whatever, and like
Yeah.
and like have this critical thought, like and
Yes.
I'm so like certainly have a perfectionist side of me and someone who's always trying to get it perfect, but like that taught me to be like gentle, it'd be like, okay, whatever, like it's like back to the breath, back to the task, it's like that. There's an aspect of like self love,
Yeah.
self compassion that's like essential,
Yes.
like I
Yes.
don't think you can do it without that. I mean, I've kind of learned through some of these kind of plant experiences that every time like I self-criticize myself, it was like, whapping myself in the back and I was creating some negative karma and that just doesn't serve at all in the long term.
No. No.
So you were going to say something.
Yeah. No, well, one, yes, I agree. I relate to that very deeply. And I think probably most people listening can relate to that sort of self-critical, judgmental voice inside when you're beginning your practice and you see, the margin for quote unquote error is like almost like 99%, in the
Right.
beginning, that it's very easy to be hard on yourself and you get discouraged and then it becomes harder and you can create other kind of like derailing kind of patterns there, but like, so yeah, I think just acceptance, it just feels like such a fundamental part of this deeper layer of mindfulness that you're emphasizing, or the sort of moment to moment metacognition, when you're really kind of engaging in that and you find yourself, whatever, a million miles away, that's not going to serve you.
Exactly.
There's a very simple movement back to right now, back to your practice, and just move it, moving forward. That, I think over time you realize, I don't need that, that critical judgmental voice. It actually doesn't serve anything, doesn't serve me. Yeah, it doesn't serve me and doesn't serve this process of growth ultimately.
Doesn't. No.
No. I wanted to ask you, Jonathan,
Sure.
so as this is going on, can you say a little bit about the ADD? Like, when were you starting to notice differences? Like, was this moment to moment metacognition a part of your ability to kind of, as well as obviously the shamatha ongoing concentration practice, but because I don't think of you as a distracted dude. Like, when we're together in conversation, I usually feel your presence, your being, you're with me, and we're together. I don't feel you're distracted. So obviously you've done a lot of work. Like, can you say a little bit about how the ADD progressed in this context?
Yeah. It was a lot of baby steps.
Yeah.
Like, it's just from my experience, like I would have periods, going back to before I did all this, where all of a sudden my mind would just go someplace and whatever for like 10, or however many seconds, it was 5 or 30 or whatever. I was just gone another direction, and I maybe was doing two things at once, so I didn't really fully grasp what was going on, or like if I was talking
Yeah.
to someone or something. And of course, I learned ways to. It was all internal, so
Yeah.
sometimes they
Right.
didn't really notice, and because I learned to compensate, but and sometimes they did notice, but because but if I missed something important, for example, but what had happened was yeah, just like slowly one piece would be I just that would happen less. So there's that piece.
Yeah.
Then there's the piece of catching it faster, like catching it and then like notice, oh, the metacognition piece, like, oh, I'm doing that thing where I'm kind of thinking about something else, stop. And then like there's the whole piece of being gently going back, like, and not like bashing yourself. And it's just like, as I said, it's more like a percent. Like I was, let's say I was like 80% present, and then slowly it was like 82, 83, 84. And then
Mm,
like,
mm.
it's not, and then like, there are other things that influence us. Like it's not just that. Like again, we talked about in the beginning, like exercise and eating. So if I was eating well and exercising, then that percentage was higher. And if I wasn't doing those things, it was probably, or if I didn't get enough sleep is another core habit.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So it's like energy is a big component of ADD along with these other things. So it's like there are like definitely lots of variables, but so it's that's kind of how it is in real life. I mean, it's like it's a slow shifting to improvement if you
Yeah.
keep these consistent habits going. At least that's
Yeah.
what it was for me.
Yeah. Nice. That makes a lot of sense to me.
So one thing I wanted to mention about the helps with this compassion thing and just in this meditation that I'm doing definitely emphasize this, which is how do you stay in the moment in your relative world, but also at the same time hold a bigger perspective? And so you're kind of operating in this relative perspective with the bigger one in mind. And one thing that I've always found helpful was like looking at just like the nature of existence. And there are two things about it that I try and hold in equal balance as much as I can. But one is that like every just being alive is a complete gift. Like it's I don't even know how its existence is possible. It's probably like the biggest mystery in mankind. Like
Yeah.
how to think nobody really knows that. So it's like everything's just a gift. So appreciate it. So there's that. And then it's my sense is that I mean things could be as big as eternity or infinity, and like big, even just thinking about what we know as the quote unquote known history. It's like you look at the enormity of the universe. So at the same time, it's like, well, we're this speck of dust in this enormity. So on the one hand, it's precious because it's like free and amazing and also irrelevant at the same time. And the reason why those two and how I hold them to try and maximize my presence is like, one, I try and be present because it's a gift, and so I try and like appreciate it and take it seriously. But the other
Yeah.
hand, I'm chill about it because whatever, it's like a speck of dust in the universe, like whatever. It's like there's no reason to get freaked out about things in that big perspective. At the same time, it's also precious. So because ultimately, what I'm striving, if you had to ask like what are some end games, I'm actually striving beyond just working on ADD, is like how can I be completely present and completely relaxed at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
and just be with whatever. Like if it's the harshest thing, then I want to feel it entirely, and if it's scary, I want to feel that, and then like that process, and allows me to keep staying in whatever's present. It's almost kind of like, this is my own construction, but it's kind of like, it's almost like I feel like spirit or God or whatever ultimate response, so underlies ultimate reality, is saying, look, it's all a gift. Just check it out. Like you're here to experience it. The gift is, the preciousness is just to experience it all, good or bad, and another teacher of mine has this thing. It's like the way it works is that when you feel something completely and you stay with it, eventually that feeling plateaus and then you get wisdom. And so what happens to other people is that they stop the feeling and then they kind of like use their mind, like I was doing before, to kind of conceptualize like what it's going to be like, and that keeps them stuck and they don't get the wisdom. So those are some bigger constructs that I've kind of helped serve my journey and give
Mm-hmm.
a more meta perspective.
Mm-hmm. That's cool. I think one thing I immediately relate to, and I think this partially relates to some of the work we've done with the plant medicine, the entheogens,
Mm-hmm.
is just being aware of death and
Mm.
mortality. And it's very similar in a lot of ways. I think embodied in that are some of the principles that you described in terms of both the absolute preciousness and mystery of life, and then also the fact that death comes for every one of us, and we don't know when. It could, it's just, it could be tomorrow, it could be today. And you look at people who, you're living your life, and then you see people, someone just falls down. I remember Brad was telling us
Mm-hmm.
his buddy just fell helping someone off the bus,
All right.
cracked his head, and that night he was dead. And this was a young, he wasn't the healthiest guy. It sounded like he had some issues, but like he wasn't gonna die. But he had he just had a bad fall, and then he had this brain bleed and died. He hemorrhaged, and like you kind of think like, well, that happens to other people. But the thing is, we are other people.
Right.
And so it always helps. And I think like Stoic philosophy has helped me with this, is to always remember is like, well, today really could be it. Today could be my last day. And mortality is real. And it's the easiest thing is to take it for granted.
Mm.
The hardest thing is just to remember, oh my God, I'm here right now. It's a complete miracle. Like you were saying in the beginning, there's
Yeah.
something like utterly mysterious and miraculous about, the fact that we're animated and our consciousness is so complex. And as someone, I can't remember who was talking about this, but it might have been like you or Vedran on the drive, but how we each have this perfectly customized subjective experience, all of us.
Mm-hmm.
And there's over, more than 6.5 billion of those perfectly customized subjective experiences of life happening simultaneously. And that's amazing. And that
Yes.
so I don't know. I that's what, when you were kind of in that reverie there about those two dimensions, that's what it brought up for me, is like the meditation on mortality. I feel like it's very parallel to that meta context you're talking about.
Yeah, no, well said. Yeah, I think it's such an important kind of understanding. And you brought up like again the entheogens and some of the plant retreats, and I think that might be a good segue into
Yeah,
talking about that. Plus, how does that directly relate to consciousness and meditation because and shadow? Because I think they're all completely linked, including these wisdom things. Because it's again, it's at the end game. It's all serving to me this way of being that's kind of more where you're more relaxed and more
yeah.
present. And actually, hopefully we'll have time to get to, but even like I've actually discovered I'm going through a deeper transformation with my relationship to thinking and feeling. But we'll kind of hopefully we can weave all those into this. Yeah, for me, I've had several of these experiences, and
Maybe
I
just tell
go ahead.
people a little bit about what we're talking about.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, good point. So yeah, we've worked with a plant with a shaman called ayahuasca, and worked with a shaman from Colombia, who from the country. That this whole family, that's all they do is this. So it's a very authentic South American custom. I think this plant comes from South America, and this medicine, and it is a medicine, is it has like two main components. One, I think, is locks into this DMT, and the other one's like an MAO inhibitor. What I think the MAO inhibitor thing, it somehow unlocks the part of your brain where trauma is stored.
Yeah,
And basically, you drink this medicine in a group, and there's a whole ceremony around it, and like different traditions have different. You wear, a lot of people wear white or kind of shamanic colors, and there's a lot of music plays a big role in it. But the heart of it is you basically drink the medicine and you just sit alone. Kind of it's done at night and you're up all night. And, you know, how I've been taught is to have an intention going into it, like to talk about like I want it's all about healing. It's not
yeah,
like how can you get like $1 million or whatever. It's really it's they screen people out. I mean they like, why
yeah.
are you
It's
doing this?
definitely about healing,
It's all about healing. That's
growth,
really
and healing.
growth and healing, exactly. And so yeah, so I mean, I knew I was going into these things working on the problems that I struggle with like my whole life, and I was like, it's really these shadow things. I was really, as we were talking about earlier, it's these subtle level thoughts. It's like, how do I, how do I change that karma, that dynamic? For me specifically, I was trying to reintegrate my feelings in a healthier way instead of like converting them all into thought. I really wanted to just feel them directly, like I did
Yeah,
when I was a little kid, and have that kind of pure experience. And I was so stuck around that, like I just didn't know how to get that done. And through a series of experiences, this medicine kind of showed me kind of how to do that. And it basically it's a combination of like insights and setting up scenarios of which you go through. I guess maybe it's most helpful to kind of give like a couple specifics.
yeah,
Like when my first ask was just like, oh, help me feel, like basically very basic.
yeah,
And I learned honestly, like the more you can kind of surrender to the medicine, just be like, listen, I've been struggling with this for so long. Please help me, like literally show like genuine concern. But basically, the medicine can upset your stomach. And so the first time I was causing a lot of pain in my stomach area. And I was trying hard just to stay with it and stay up. And there was a moment, and this happened pretty quickly. Like I mean, it took like 45 minutes for the medicine to kick in. I was staying with it for like 45 minutes and hours. But then I had a moment where I saw in my mind say, look, this pain is so intense. I don't want to be here at all. I want to go to my mind. Like it was almost those exact words. And
yeah.
I'd never seen that sequence happen.
Mm-mm.
And that moment changed my life right there. I was just like, wow, I've only been doing this for like an hour and I've already had like a life changing incident. Because the reason why that was so important was it gave me empathy. I was like, wow, if I'm like in my mid 40s here and I can't handle this pain, how could a little kid deal with this kind of intensity? And I started to have this huge empathy for my younger self and why these patterns developed. So instead of like hating on the part that was giving my the most trouble and self-loathing and self-critical, it was a complete shift in relationship. It was like, oh, I get it. I see why my younger self made this decision. And I
Yes.
decided I kind of like, I kind of like said like there's like my higher self, and then there's like this feeling body, and I was like had this huge inner dialogue around, listen, I see why we made these decisions, and listen, I want to do it differently in the future, and I'm really sorry about that. And I know we've been doing this pattern for 40 years, and you have no reason to believe me, but believe me, I'm deadly serious. Like, I'm doing it in a very mild voice, but when I was there, it was like the intensity was ramped up to 10, and I was saying these things like over and over again. It was like, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. It was like,
So,
I want things different. Yeah,
and
go ahead.
you're in a certain way, you're in this dialogue with your own inner
Yes.
self as the part of your psychology connected with your childhood.
Yeah, exactly, with that kind of pattern. It's kind of like yeah, I've learned that there's this psychology system called like inner family systems where they kind of break, each kind of like desire or aspect of our thing has like a voice, and it's almost like you give it like a
Mm,
persona, and then you're kind of like they kind of like go about their own business until they come in conflict, and that's kind of like when it comes conscious to us. Like
yeah,
and so this was a moment where I was like, I want to do a shift.
yeah,
And so like it's I don't again, it's like how life is a miracle. I don't even get how this plant exactly somehow customizes, gives people what they need, but
yeah.
it's been a breath of fresh air, and I feel like, it's been a game changer for me.
That okay. So there's a couple things like the main thing. So I wanted to share a little bit of my own experience to kind of
Sure.
sort of support some of what you're saying, but also I think for me, what comes through overwhelmingly when you speak about this, and it's something that I appreciate about you in general and the work that you've been doing diligently in terms of your own growth is related to like this sort of cultivating this deep capacity for self-acceptance and this deep practice of it's all fine. It's all okay. I'm not going to beat myself up about this. I forgive you right now. Like
Hmm.
no gap. And that's just, it seems to me as long as like, certainly as long as you and I have been doing the medicine work together, which has only been like a year, but at least for me. But then also before that, you've had this focus on self-compassion that hearing you talk about the medicine, it helps me appreciate that the medicine has deeply enhanced this for you, this capacity of not judging yourself.
Yes. In fact, on another night I did it. It was completely the theme of the night. Like I basically, I don't remember. I think I was asking about some sort of self-criticism actually. And the medicine whatever, like, it came back with each person can only handle the exact level of truth that they can handle in any given moment. And what I immediately realized was the truth of that is that like we're all, at a certain level of development at a time, and based on our past, I think the Buddhists call us like dependent origination. Everything's like, kind of evolved in a certain way. And so why the question was like, what I had to pose to myself was, why am I beating myself up over something that just was like an organic development? And I started to see it from, instead of me not being this idealized, perfect version of myself, I just accepted that that was like the path that happened. And I like spent like the whole night, like first, like looking at every little piece of my life that I had any kind of self criticism or self loathing, and just like look at it from this new understanding. And it was like a really emotional experience. Like I
Mm,
literally like would like recreated my mind,
mm,
and then I would just look at this criticist perspective, and then I'd look at the like this perspective of how it actually came about, and then I would just be like, I forgive you.
yeah,
And like it can't be an intellectualized, it's got to be an emotional experience.
yeah,
And then do the same thing with people who had wronged you. And like this is, and this is the, because these are the things that are coming up in my mind. We talked about these thoughts that are causing me to be distracted, It's like these is part of the origin of it. It's right here. It's like
Right.
it's all this stuff that
Right.
like I didn't fully experience because I was being critical and I kind of suppressed it, and it keeps coming back up in some form. And like you got to do this deep work, and forgiveness and self-acceptance, and this love is definitely one of the core cores. And so it's actually like it's a combination of wisdom and heart, like because like the heart and compassion is coming from this wisdom that where there's these we're these human beings, and we have limits, and we're only at different, we're we don't start off as like God with the most perfect thing. We're these start with and we just slowly develop, and each what I realized was each moment was literally perfect, relevant to my level of development, and it can't be any other way. And the same thing is true for everyone else.
Mhm.
And like that was like, wow.
Yeah.
So like that just opened the gates of compassion at a deeper level, and both. So it was a big deal.
Yeah. Definitely. And I just want to underscore, I mean, I think just very briefly for me, the medicine from a much different angle, for me, it's been a lot about ultimately self-acceptance, self-integration, self, I hesitate to use the word, but I think it actually applies some kind of like self-forgiveness, but just coming to terms with choices I've made in my life, and instead of seeing them as giant mistakes, really starting to integrate them and seeing the positive side of them, which for a while I was just seeing the negative. And, it took, I think, a couple ceremonies to get there. But man, and those were the clear intentions I was coming in with, was really to kind of heal and accept the choices that I had made. And then once I did that, it really it changed into, okay, you've accepted it, but now what about really embracing it, And what about
Right.
integrating it deeply and seeing the part of you that was strong in making those choices and decisive, and the agency and the autonomy, and because, you know, it really in a lot of ways had to do with healing some fractured parts of my own psyche and my own being and my own heart, and all of those things, a real, yeah, there was a kind of disintegration and a fractured quality in relationship to these experiences, and the medicine, I think, in a very gentle, beautiful way, just has helped me kind of integrate and accept, appreciate, and then honor, and ultimately supplicate, I would say, and bow down in front of the, I don't know if it's the process or the kind of self with a capital S, but just the whole kind of experience, the whole amazing nature of life, and life as both as something that I am not in any way apart from, life as me, without that being a kind of selfish thing, but just that we are just part of this whole sacred unfolding. We're right in the middle of it. And
Yeah. I was gonna
yeah,
say, that's really beautifully said.
thanks.
I think the word you used several times I want to expand upon was, I think it's like the word whole.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
that is a big, in this meditation thing. That's like the idea is like to, as you were saying, these fractured pieces, to heal them so we can
yes,
be whole with this moment.
yeah,
And it's kind of like this meditation has, so the meditation has another component we haven't gone into yet, which is a metaphysical element, which asks, this is kind of like we talked a little bit about
what
kind
is
of like a
met
bigger.
can you define that word for
Sure.
everyone?
Metaphysical means, so meta just means like going above, like hovering above, and we're like
Hmm.
reflecting and taking like a higher view, right?
Yeah,
So metaphysical is like taking like a bigger view on just like life and reality and the nature of existence, and taking like a higher perspective.
Yeah.
So, for example, like I mentioned a couple of times, Ken Wilber, integral theory is considered a metaphysician,
Got it.
and he's looked at all these different things and come up with a model. So the meditation has changed like my identity, and so basically, I think what's the most common things for identity is we look at some select feedback we've gotten, whether it comes from our childhood, our present, our career, or like our family, and we think this is who we are. And what I've been going through is a process of relearning that really I am nothing more than and that kind of we usually call it like a self construction or a self identity, and it's very useful obviously socially when someone is asking about you. But it can what happens is that people tend to make it very solid. What they call in Buddhism is to reify it, to like make it
Yeah.
like that's all there is. And the truth is there's really just there's like what is there, and then there's like unlimited ways to look at anything pretty much. And so we tend to like hyper focus on one instead of being open to everything. So what this has kind of taught me is trying, and this is not again a long process to really fully completely do it, but is to like, and this is again about being whole, is like who am I really? Well, I'm this moment, and this when I shift that, like there's no guard, there's no self-defense. I'm literally can just it helps with this idea of presence that we keep coming back to, and just being, as you were saying, it helps me be whole
Yeah.
here right
Yeah.
now. And if there's like, if everything's just the same, if everyone's just actually doing the best they can, and including myself, I'm not beating myself up. I'm just here. I'm chill about something because like, it's going to go on forever. And it's, it's like, it's not important, but it's also precious. It's like you hold these different things and you can just, the result is this deep presence and deep relaxation. And yeah, and it's powerful. It makes a huge difference. And like, I mean, if you want to be your higher self, then you want to like maximize kind of like each and every moment. And this gives you the tool set to kind of do that. These insight meditations do a lot of like asking like, who are we again, let's like who are we really, like what is this consciousness, and you do a lot of these like investigations, what they would call them, where you're kind of like we did an investigation earlier, we talked about like thought, like what is a thought, where does it come from, where does it go, or like with emotions, it's like I basically, because I was like afraid of emotions, I'd suppress them, but I actually like had to go into it and be like, what is this emotion thing, and then when I stayed with it, it's just like a feeling, it's different. And so it's like, because it's different, you feel like a lot of us, fear change. And we just like, what is this? It's uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, if you literally get past that and you're just like, and you stay with it, you're like, oh, this is just like a sensation and whatever, it's like, it comes, it goes. And when I like stayed calm about it, it would take like a natural path and I could just like be with it. And again, I'm making it sound easy. This is a process that, I'm probably still going through at some point at different levels, because there's just there, you have to get used to different emotions and different feelings, and how can you do it, at different contexts. But it's really this inquiry, and and I kind of like, if I feel like, I guess in Mahamudra and Dzogchen and the Vajrayana path, they would say your essence nature this is a bit abstract, but I'll go there. It's like they call it like a formless practice. Where what I mean by that is like, let's say you're like, anyone who's listening to this can just kind of like look out, and they can see all the stuff in their context, and they can like see their thoughts like coming up and emotions, and basically what it helped me force them to realize is that what it's saying is that all that you can take in, anything you can experience, is happening on, what's it happening on, right? And so it's like some people will call it consciousness. In our school, we just call it like awareness, the things you're aware of. And you imagine like the thing is on is almost like empty, and no matter where you go, you're always, it's just the content of that kind of awareness changes.
Yeah.
And literally I am, you are that kind of awareness. And so like when people talk about like in this school of thought, it's like you don't they don't believe you necessarily die, and like people have heard stories probably like going like through tunnels or lights. And so they're saying like your form body might die, like your physical body, but that essence nature, this awareness, goes on. And so
Yeah.
it's an interesting way of looking at things. And, it's definitely changes things in terms of like, again, holding this bigger picture. And as
Yeah.
you mentioned earlier about dealing with death, that all has to do with like fear. If you kind of hold a bigger picture that you are this like field of awareness that's impermanent, and you're just here having experience, learning some stuff, having some good times, and then we're off to somewhere else. It changes things. It helps you relax and be more present because you're not as fearful.
Totally. And my former teacher, the way he would sometimes describe, he had us practice a free awareness practice where, one often he would describe it as focusing not on the content of consciousness, but on the context. The,
Right.
what is all that arising in or through? And when you talk about, so you're ultimately, you're focusing on nothing quote unquote solid. So no feelings, no thoughts, whatever. You're focused on the thing, the context in which all that is arising. And that, and as you were talking about it, it took me right there again,
Right.
and it's the field of awareness itself. And that, it just takes time and practice to learn how to become more, and don't mistake me, I'm certainly not fundamentally grounded there myself, but it takes time and practice, one, to be even become aware of that, much less fundamentally stationed there as, this is my prime, identified with that as your primary self. And obviously that is very much the goal of a lot of these practices, but that's a lifelong practice to become identified with that field. You could, and obviously
Yes.
meditation is such a marvelous and sort of miraculous pathway to, you the beauty of it is you don't have to be fundamentally grounded there to actually practice it and to experience it and to practice being that.
Exactly. Yeah. It's as you said, it's another thing that's like a slow on growth. And the more you deal with these shadow elements, that the more it enables you to do that, because those are the
Yeah.
things that are distracting you.
Yeah.
It's they cause reactivity.
Yeah.
They're just like habits, deep habits you're
Yeah.
trying to get removed. And so another thing that I've been learning is the more you remove these kind of clouds, like I guess we talked about earlier about like this witness self or your deeper self. And I feel like that what that allows is that to fill up more of your being. Like
Mm,
some people will call
yeah.
that soul, and then you're in this process of soul inflow. So you can be more your true deeper self. And this is what some of the esoteric spiritual traditions called alchemy, this
Right.
transmutation or change from your kind of more regular kind of human thing to this more just slow like moving into your higher self, so your higher self becomes more and more of who you are in every
Mm,
moment.
mm,
It's a it's a journey. It's and there's some things that are similar, but the specifics are always going to be unique to each person.
yes.
What I've noticed is that there's also this huge journey of really looking at like thinking and feeling and different sensations in my relationship. I notice kind of like changes over time, because like for example, like I've noticed with feeling, there's just so many different kinds of feelings. Like one big major one would be like, is this a feeling like out of habit or the past, of karma, or is this like my deeper soul like trying to tell me something?
Yeah.
Like that's a big one, and like that's not easy to discern until that's a practice, like to actually like pay attention to that and be like using your thinking to discern that. So I used to go about more going around using my analytical mind to like deconstruct things and logic things and what are the pros and cons and then make a decision. And I find myself now, it's like, okay, what does my deeper self want to
Mm.
do? How do I
Mm-hmm.
really feel about this? Like
Yeah.
inside, like I've grown to totally go from this place where I don't trust my feelings to like, oh no, this is my biggest ally. There's something metaphysical here that, there's like when I'm operating from this bigger field, like we both talked about like this kind of formless awareness, but like I guess in the Buddhist schools it says that like all these formless awareness are like everything's connected, all these different perspectives are connected, and feelings are the most like dense and powerful thing. And so like I think if you're operating from this formless thing, you can, and just you're operating from this deeper place where you're not in the shadow, you can kind of, I don't know, you got a more reliable, trustworthy feeling. And I've
Yeah.
actually
Yes.
tested that over time, and I'm learning to trust it as a new way of being as opposed to this other way of being and so I feel like this path is like trust is like a huge thing. And
Yeah.
Dan emphasized it a lot. It's like instead of like being worried or doubtful about things, it's more like, no, I trust that I'm having the exact experiences I need to have here, and that this field of awareness is going to give me, what I need. Instead of, it's like a totally different relationship. Everything's about like
Yeah.
changing your relationship to experience. So I feel like at
Yes.
this higher level, you're just kind of like, you're again, it helps me be present. It helps me be relaxed. And, instead of like worrying about negative things happening, quote unquote, negative things, it's more like, oh, well, that experience that I could have perceived as negative is probably going to teach me something cool. So if I'm just chill about it and stay with it, and I get that, as we are talking about earlier, if I feel it entirely and go through that experience, there's going to be some wisdom there. So before I may have been like, oh, and now I'm like, okay, whatever, we'll see what happens. Something's good's going to come. Just trust,
Yeah.
just patience,
Uh,
and so
that's good. I think it's a good kind of place for us to wrap up. I feel like
perfect.
we started narrow and we opened up into the ultimate field, and now kind of rounding it out with trust is a nice place to leave
I,
everybody.
I concur.
Cool. And so, Jonathan, if people want to get in touch with you, or if they want to follow up and learn more about what you're up to, or whatever, how should people track you down or be in touch with you?
Yeah, you can contact me via email, which is just Jonathan Mozenter at Gmail, JONATHAN at Gmail, I guess, turn email. And I don't really have a website just yet, but I probably will in the coming years. But if you wanted to like follow me on Facebook, you could go, I think I'm just uh, Facebook and then slash Mozenter. My last name is my page, and you could hit like the following button or add me as a friend, and those would probably be the best ways to keep in touch with me.
Nice. And yeah, I imagine, maybe we'll do this again. Maybe what we can do at some point is get more than just you and me. Maybe we can get a couple guys on the line and talk about the medicine more. That might be an interesting show. And
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, I'm in for that. That sounds fantastic.
nice. Great. And Jonathan, thank you for coming on. Thank you for sharing your journey with all of us, your wisdom and your heart. I really appreciate it. And I think people are going to get a lot out of just hearing about your experience.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me on the show, and thanks for being a great active listener and drawing me out and asking great questions and holding space. And I really appreciate the opportunity to share my story. And I hope people gain some wisdom and insights out of it. And feel free to be in touch.
Awesome. All right. Okay, everyone. Until next time, thank you. So I hope you enjoyed my interview with Jonathan. I had a great time doing that interview. It was really beautiful. So if you enjoyed the show, if you want to support the One Mind Meditation Podcast, I encourage you to head over to iTunes and leave us a rating and a review. That is the best way to help us get our show in front of more meditators. So you can do that. You can leave us a rating and a review over on iTunes. And did you know that we offer meditation courses for new and intermediate meditators. If you're looking for a meditation course, if you struggle to create a daily habit out of meditation, then this is the course for you. Actually, these are the courses for you. We've got multiple courses. Check them out over at aboutmeditation.com. And finally, let's end with a quote. And this quote is perfectly tailored to today's interview. It's from the Rigpa Glimpse of the Day, and it goes like this. The times when you are suffering can be those when you are open, and where you are extremely vulnerable can be where your greatest strength really lies. Say to yourself, I am not going to run away from this suffering. I want to use it in the best and richest way I can so that I can become more compassionate and more helpful to others. Suffering, after all, can teach us about compassion. If you suffer, you will know how it is when others suffer. And if you're in a position to help others, it is through your suffering that you will find the understanding and compassion to do so.